the last part of this is in the time of Moses and where they're about to, the title of it is the 10 Spies. But I guess, before I was thinking a couple different ways to start this out. The book asks a question, when was the last major transition that you made in your life?
Any kind of transition?
Well, I guess,
Major.
yeah, so a major transition in your life. And then what led to that transition? And how did you go about making that decision?
Last year.
Yeah. Maybe.
I still don't know how the transition happened.
Well, the opposite for us, empty nest, which is a long time now. I guess retirement would have been the other one.
So what led to your decision on retiring?
They told me I was gonna have to teach sixth grade again in social studies.
He said no.
I don't think, this is 2 weeks before school's out. And
Who did that to you, Kelly?
Mike Wright,
I didn't know him, okay.
he knew I wanted to go to seventh grade because I had been teaching seventh grade. And we had sixth graders, that was the year sixth graders moved to junior high and ninth grade went up to high school. And there was gonna be an opening in seventh grade the next year, and he knew I wanted it. Well, 2 weeks before school's out, he informed me he gave it to somebody else. And then I was gonna have to do sixth grade again. I thought, I don't think so. I said, I think I'm retired.
He always told me, you'll know when
You'll
it's
know.
time.
You'll know when it's.
And I did. Of course, I taught 6 more years, but after he did. But I knew when it was time. I was just done. I could, because I was ready. I had the years and everything. So I just decided to. And the transition was probably easier for me than for him.
Yeah, I transitioned from teaching junior high to being a kindergarten aide for 6 years.
And then only because he was about to go nuts because he thought he ought to have a
Sixth
job.
grade might have been easier than yeah.
But it hasn't, I think because of the support system we have, that it hasn't been a hard transition. And the transition of empty nest was not our decision. So that's just something that you go with, as it happened. And for us, 3 kids, 5.5 years apart, and they all got married in 9 months. So it was kind of it was a good one, but it was a transition when all your kids are gone. So different than what you guys are going through. But
Say ours was latest. We've had a lot of major transitions. But the latest was Trent's job change. About, 4 years ago?
2.5.
2.5, really?
it's been a long time.
It was like 4.
It shouldn't because I
It was a
don't
good one.
work very much.
We
anymore.
went from working all the time, like literally all weekend, holidays. I think Christmas, he took off a couple hours to be with us. It was pretty bad. I looked like a single parent most of the time. And he switched jobs to a totally different environment and changed our lives. Like added kids games and complete flexibility, and he's at a place that he knows he can step away for a little bit, and it's a whole new world.
So what caused that was family.
Pretty much all
Priorities.
family.
Pardon?
Pretty much all family.
Mhm.
I mean, knowing that I wasn't going to be there for junior high stuff and all these different things led to, you have to make that choice of, and it really wasn't, it was never about the money, because the money for, like I think I told y'all like a couple weeks ago, my flexibility on what I make is like, has gone from here to here, to here, to here, and it's just gone back and forth. So money's never meant anything. So, and it was the craziest thing that, the guy that I got to be our CEO, he ended up getting this other great opportunity and left. And he called me about like 6 months later and he was like, how's it going? I'm like, it's miserable. We're on our second CEO since you've left. And he's like, I need you to talk to this guy. You need somebody like you. And it was just flip of a switch. I was like, you know what? I think I need that. And so, we went to God and started praying and seeing what was important, and met with him for a couple of times, and then started a whole new job. I mean, completely nothing that I knew. And the reason why I was asking that question is it easier to worry, or is it easier to be optimistic?
Well, I do both. I mean, I am a glass half full girl. I always have been, but I still worry.
Depends on what the thing is for me, one which is harder.
She doesn't do change very well.
Yeah, I don't. Love it.
Which is amazing because she married somebody that's like,
Well, and she's taught me to be more optimistic. The way I grew up, there wasn't much to be optimistic about, so I was pretty pessimistic. And so it was a major learning curve for me to be around somebody that worries but sees that there's a bright side somewhere. We just gotta keep looking till we find it.
Let's just say concerned.
Yeah.
Worried to make myself sick, but I stick sick, not very often. But I do always try to find that. I think it is easier, maybe not easier to do, but easier on you once you get there, to just look at that silver lining, try to find it.
and so, if I looked at myself, I think it's always been easier for me to be logical, not necessarily worry or optimistic, but know the bad's coming, know the good's coming, but not allow myself to dwell on that problem. Does that make sense? Which is good and bad. It also allows no emotion to whichever way it tends to go. So you're not shocked, you're not excited, you're not saddened. But this last book is about when the Israelites are about to go into Canaan, and Moses sends out 10 spies. And what happened when they came back? Okay. 8 out of the 10 of them, the first question was asked, well, how was it? Man, it is beautiful. It is flowing with milk and honey. It is everything that God said it would be, except there's really big people over there. And they have these huge walls. They're stronger than us, they're mightier than us. There's no way we're going to defeat them. And so, it's funny always going back and looking at the Israelites because, again, when you're in the turmoil, you forget, it's funny how, because actually we were supposed to be through this last week, but this week they'll talk this morning about promises. And here God has given them a promise from day one with Abraham. And it's not like, that was a tradition that they knew over and over again, especially with the Israelites. And with, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph and all these things, these promises have been given to them. And that's been on God's timing. And so here, all of a sudden, 8 of the 10 people say, man, I don't know if we can do this. And here they watch God deliver them out of Egypt, a fire by night, a cloud by day, fed them every which way. And then they're like, oh, I don't know if God can do this one. You know, like, oh, are you kidding me? But yet in our lives today, when we see something that is overwhelming, what's our first reaction? I don't know how I'm going to do this.
When you look around and all you see are the waves, it can be hard to be hopeful.
But why is that? I mean, you know, if we give all of our heart, mind, and soul to be faithful, why do we have that doubt?
It's the devil.
Okay. And that is because of the world and everything that interferes with that, that tells us that you have to do this and you have to do this for you to do better, or you blame that because that's how you are. And so Numbers 13 and 14. You know, one of the parts I want to look at is, I'll say this without trying to be condescending, but do we know the story about this?
Mm-hmm.
So as they're exploring Canaan, they send out the 10 spies. The 10 spies come back to report, and they talk about the figs, and I mean it was flowing with milk and honey, and it was beautiful. And in verse 27 of 13, it says, "We went into the land to which you sent us, and it was flowing with milk and honey. Here's the fruit. But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large. We even saw descendants of Anak, the Amalekite, live in Negev, the Hittite, the Jebusite, and the Amorites live in the hill country, and the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan." And so, but then Caleb silenced the people. "We should go up and take possession of the land. We can certainly do it." But the men who had gone up with him said, "We can't attack those people. They are strangers, or they are stronger than we are." And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land and explored the land that they had explored. They said, "The land we explored devoured those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim, their descendants of Anak, came from Nephilim. We seemed like grasshopper in their own eyes, and we looked the same to them." So, it's hard to be, I think it's very difficult to be optimistic all the time, but knowing that the things that have happened with the Israelites, being able to see the miracles that God has performed for them, why would they be afraid? After being literally brought out of the desert, seeing everything, knowing the story of Egypt, why be afraid?
Well, he said we cannot be, and so they're just thinking, we can't do this, and they're forgetting about God going with them, depending on themselves.
When they've been in the desert for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and so that could have, how many years was it?
They wandered for 40 years.
Yeah.
And it said all the people who crossed the Red Sea, they all died out anyway.
Right, so
But-
it's a different generation.
Yeah,
think this is the same generation though.
Yeah, this is-
Next time
Yeah.
that they.
We're about to be in the,
Oh, right, okay,
we're
yeah,
about to wander for 40
that's
years.
right, okay.
So you need to die out.
Mm.
And so, yes, I mean,
But we kind of forget in time.
I
You
mean,
know,
literally
and they're tired, I'm sure.
well, and that's the other thing too, is so 2 chapters before, is the Israelites leave Sinai, they've gotten the 10 Commandments. So they're ready to enter the promised land that God has promised. Again, what Dale talks about in service is us as Christians keeping a promise and what that word means and what that vow means. And that God's promise doesn't ever change. It may not be on our time, but they don't ever change. And so what I think is great is seeing Moses and Caleb, and I forget who the other, there was another one, Caleb and Joshua. Was it
yeah,
Joshua?
he's the one that ends up.
Hoshea, or
Yeah.
what he's called.
So, there was only 3 of them that were really having that optimistic look. And again, it wasn't too far before where they saw the Red Sea split. They saw fire come out of Mount Sinai and, Moses coming down glowing with the 10 Commandments and again, the pillar and the cloud. And so they see all these things as they're going through, and then all of a sudden, immediately they're exactly right where they were. And so I look at that and I just think about how quickly, or maybe not how quickly, but is it how shallow our faith is with God? Or is it not believing that He can do anything?
I think it's just allowing our circumstance to own us.
Okay.
It's kind of like our lack of ability to rely on the spiritual. We are constantly tied to the physical and fear that comes along with the physical. We don't dwell enough and deep enough in the spiritual things to keep that faith strong and active and in control. And so the physical takes over and you start making bad choices.
Have you ever though, that you can trust God, but you don't know if He's gonna do it the way you want it done?
It's control.
Maybe you're just afraid of how it really is gonna turn out. And so you try to fix it the best you can, even in your prayers, this is really the way it needs to be fixed, God. If you really want, let me tell you how would be the best way. And of course, we don't say that exactly those words because that's not okay. But in your head, you're really afraid for how it might turn out, what His will might be, instead of believing that whatever it is, it's best. And I also think we aren't good, I'm not anyway, about seeing things as what's best for the community, the Israelites as a whole. We see what's best for us. And maybe we'll have to suffer for what's good for the whole.
I think it's that, I've heard Dell and others, on the Friday morning, band of brothers, and they'll talk about we're always afraid to ask for patience or for obedience or for a softened heart or for us to be on our knees because we're afraid of what may cause us to be patient, to have an open heart, to have a soft spirit. And so instead of being more, again, I look at it from the optimistic side, knowing that, hey, to gain patience is to be closer to Christ. And this is how I'm going to do it. I mean, if we look at it from I look at it from the logical aspect is I know what it takes to have more patience, to know how to love God more. I know how to do it. Now it's just whether or not I physically want to look in the mirror and go, are you going to start doing this? And so I go back to the middle of 14, Numbers 14, and let's look at some of the responses. And if somebody wouldn't mind reading, start in verse 7. That kind of in the middle. So start in verse 6. And if somebody wouldn't mind reading 6 through 9, and then somebody else reading 13 through 15. We're talking about 14 or 15? 14.
Joshua, son of Nun, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, who were among those who had explored the land, tore their clothes and said to the entire Israelite assembly, the land we passed through and explored is exceedingly good. If the Lord is pleased with us, he will lead us into that land, the land flowing with milk and honey, and will give it to us. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not be afraid of the people of the land, because we will devour them. Their protection is gone, but the Lord is with us. Do not be afraid of them.
10 to what?
10 to 4, or yeah, 15.
Go ahead, Jack.
10 through 15.
Yes, sir. Okay. But the whole assembly talked about stoning them. Then the glory of the Lord appeared at the tent of meeting to all the Israelites. The Lord said to Moses, how long will these people treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me, in spite of all the signs I have performed among them? I will strike them down with the plague and destroy them, but I will make you into a nation greater and stronger than they. And Moses said to the Lord, then the Egyptians will hear about it. By your power you brought these people up from among them, and they will tell the inhabitants of this land about it. They have already heard that you, Lord, are with these people, and that you, Lord, have been seen face to face, that your cloud stays over them, and that you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. If you put all these people to death, leaving none alive, the nations who have heard about this report about you will say, the Lord was not able to bring these people into the land he promised them on oath, so he slaughtered them in the wilderness.
So I think it's a couple of different things. I think it's really kind of, easily being able to put in today's world. Here's people saying, hey guys, we can do this. But what does the overall mob say?
We're afraid.
We're afraid. Let's kill them for being optimistic about what we can do. And so I laugh at that because, whenever you have that fear and you're grumbling and you have all this doubt, do you want somebody to come up to you like, it'll be fine. Be excited. Know where your faith is. Come on, let's go. But what do you want to do in all reality? Turn away. Say, leave me alone. Sometimes we want to stay in the self-pityness and say, I'm good here.
Comfort zone.
That's right.
Stay in there.
And so, I think this is a great scenario where you see God as he's wanting to destroy them. He's fed up. And then Moses intercedes. And Moses puts a worldly taint on what the people would say about his almighty God.
And this is not the first time he's had to do
That's
it
right.
with the Lord.
I mean, when he's on the mountain. And so I think it's funny how one man who's talking to God can change a complete outcome. And do we believe that we are able to do that in today's world? Is it too hard to fathom?
I always struggle with the way that Moses talks to God. It's like just friends. You know, he can call God out. I don't have the guts to do that.
Yeah.
To say, God, you're wrong. I expect that the result will change.
That's a good point.
Well, would God have been wrong for destroying the children of Israel? I mean, because he did make a covenant with them, but they broke the covenant. I mean, like, yeah. I'm with Jake. Like, I don't know if I could ever say anything like that to God. I want to be I'm 100% with it. But like, I read that, it's like, I understand where God's coming from, and I can't believe He still chooses us sometimes. But yeah.
Well, and there's been occasions where he's taken quite a few of them out. Not all of them, but he's taken quite a few of them out that were openly disobedient and disrespecting him. And they should have learned from that.
Well, and I think that's the main part that I really want to kind of get at is that, you know, the actual result, instead of them dying immediately, the results of their grumbling, the results of their lack of faith, complaining, does end up being in not a death like this, but a death that makes them wonder, feed off the land, but not of the one that he promised.
You know, when I've read this before, and maybe this is my optimism, trying to find silver lining stuff, but I've never seen it as, no, God, you're wrong. I've always seen it as, Lord, please, don't do this. If you do this, this will happen, this will happen. Please be merciful to them. And then telling him, you are a God of mercy and a God of forgiveness. And I think, although for sure we wouldn't say, hey, you're wrong here. Hopefully we would have the courage and the faith to go to him and just beg for forgiveness and for blessings that we feel like we need in our lives.
I agree with the forgiveness part. That's what I was thinking. You know, it's kind of the saying, you know, Christ saying, forgive them for they know not what they do. And I don't know, I think like in today's world, and to put it as how I kind of do the same thing, is I think I put God in a box, and I think I forget, I guess, for that he's capable of producing miracles, but we don't see in today's world like the same type of public miracles, you know, and like just health-wise, you know, with different things going on. Like we had a lady who, you know, passed away this past week, and I knew when she was septic and kidneys were going, she's probably not going to live, you know. And I think that's just a small example of when I pray, you know, am I saying, I'm believing you can heal, you know, and expect that, or am I just saying, well, you know, that's just the world and our body, you know, that type of mentality of just the reverence of God versus what I see in the world.
And what's hard is doing that and begging for, but still in your spirit being willing to accept whatever he decides. So, or whatever does happen, that he'll be with you through it.
Right. But I think just the miracle
yeah.
side of it, you know, April died, she always prays, I believe, or I will believe with you, you know, and I think that's something that really hit me when she said it years ago, because I never prayed like that before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I just I don't know. I'm rambling, sorry.
Well, so what I want to kind of look at after that is, to finish it off, let's turn to 1 Corinthians 9. Paul talks about, I think the difference between where the Israelites were, but I do believe that I kind of look at it in the way y'all were talking about it from, we now have the ability to go to God like Moses had that ability to go to God. To talk to him as, like I talked to my dad today, where I can encourage my dad. I can discuss things. And it's not necessarily a friendship, because there's still tons of respect and still tons of, I'm still looking to him as a mentor, but we can correct each other. And so I actually do kind of see it from that perspective of, not that I'm at no point on that same level, but because of Christ's sacrifice, it allows us to be able to walk in front of the presence of God and to talk like Moses did. And so as a part of that, first part of 1 Corinthians, or the end part of 1 Corinthians 9, Paul talks to us about his freedom, and he's like, though I am free and belong to no one, I have made myself a slave to everyone, to win as many as possible. To the Jews, I became like a Jew, to win the Jews. To those under the law, I became like one under the law, though I myself am not under the law, so as to win those under the law. To those that have not the law, I became like those ones not having the law. And so, and then I like verse 22, it says, to the weak I became weak, to win the weak. I have become all things to all people, so that by all possibilities means I might save some. I do all for the sake of the gospel, that I may share in his blessings. And I flip over to 1 Corinthians 10, and where it talks about the the rebellion of the Israelites in the wilderness. And, I look at how he's talking to the Corinthians, the struggles that they're going through, and all these outside circumstances that are creating them to fall off the path. And Paul is encouraging them. And so, and a lot of it had to do, in verses, 1 through 10, it was talking about their grumbling, as some did, and were killed and destroyed. And then the last part is 2 Corinthians 5. This is probably where I'll kind of end it. So let's start in verse 5 and go to verse 8. Someone wouldn't mind to read that and be finished.
Now the one who has fashioned us for this very purpose is God, who has given us the Spirit as a deposit, guaranteeing what is to come. Therefore, we are always confident and know that as long as we are at home in the body, we are away from the Lord. For we live by faith, not by sight. We are confident, I say, and would prefer to be away from the body and at home with the Lord. So we make it our goal to please him, whether we are at home in the body or away from it.
So, again, I take that mentality with Moses of how confident he was to have that conversation. How confident he was knowing that God's promise was going to be there. How confident he knew that there was going to be consequences for the actions of the people grumbling. While he might have saved their lives, it wasn't an immediate strike down. It was a different way. But having that confidence to know how God is in not only their life, but how he was training them to go into the promised land. And if you read past Numbers 14, he talks about everybody in here that grumbled towards me is going to die right here. Everybody else that had confidence and faith that I'm going to take them to the promised land, they're going to go. And so imagine hearing that news and telling the people, okay, let me tell you what your grumbling and lack of confidence and lack of faith has just done. Caleb, you and Joshua and everybody else that had faith, you'll see that. Everybody else, you're going to die right here.
And what's really sad is it wasn't only the guys that came back with no faith and fear. It's that they spread that to everybody else. Doubt can just spread so quickly. Just a seed of doubt.
And I think not only does it spread, I mean, it can change a heart very quickly. So I think that's kind of where I'll end it from that perspective is, you know, that confidence. When you see somebody with that confidence, especially in their faith, that gives me more confidence whenever I see that in somebody else. When I see somebody, you know, basically look at me and says, have you prayed for that? And my honest answer is, I haven't.
I didn't think about that.
I mean, and so then you're going, okay, I know where I need to be.
Mm-hmm.
Any other thoughts?
So I was curious because I remember Joshua gives Caleb an allotment of land, and I couldn't remember what it was. So I looked it up. I thought this was interesting. So according to the commandment of the Lord to Joshua, Joshua gave to Caleb the son of Jephunneh a portion of the land among the people of Judah, which is Kiriath Arba, Hebron. Arba was the father of Anak. And Caleb drove out from there the three sons of Anak, Sheshai, Ahim, and Talmai. So he comes back and is like, we can't find them because of they're the kids of Anak. And God gives to Caleb Anak. He's like, go get them. And so, you know, and it's Hebron. So Hebron's like one of the best places in Canaan. And that's how God rewards them. It's like, okay, let's see it. Go do it.